This is a car that showcases the pinnacle of design. The Pagani Huayra is more than an automobile, it is art. We often talk about cars by reciting the numbers, the ring times, the cost in dollars, the horsepower, and the number of cylinders. But a Pagani is so much more than just numbers. It's motion, passion, and beauty defined. This has got to be one of my absolute favorite cars. Even the name is fun to say. Huayra. Not only is it one of the fastest cars around the Top Gear test track, an incredible testament to the performance of this car, but when I think of what an exotic interior should be, well, it's this. What I really love though is that the Huayra isn't like modern hypercars. It's not some computer-controlled space-age electric-assisted robot on wheels. Nah. While Ferrari was out there bolting leftover Tesla parts to their cars, Pagani was busy doing one thing, making the Huayra perfect. See, that's the core of Pagani. You start with a basic car. In this case, the Huayra came out back in 2011. You know, the year that Adele's Rolling in the Deep finished #1 on the charts. Don't ask me how I know, because that is more than a decade ago, and it's almost as old as a Nissan GTR. And you can tell there's a fire starting in my heart. With this Pagani, it's reaching a fever pitch. It's bringing me out of the dark. Because in every waking moment, Horacio was pursuing a car that was the perfect blend of art, engineering, and mechanics. The original Huayra, which name comes from a wind god of the South American Quechua people, is built with Pagani's proprietary woven carbotanium composite, which is a blend of carbon fiber and titanium, and it's really a marvel to see up close. Powering the hypercar is a 6-liter twin-turbo V12, hand-built by one AMG technician, a long-lasting partnership showcasing each builder artfully mastering their craft. This masterpiece was followed by the Huayra BC, which is the track-focused version, and is named after the late Benny Caiola, a friend of Horacio Pagani, and coincidentally, the very first Pagani customer.
La Huayra BC è la tua macchina, te la dedico col cuore.
Then you have the Huayra Roadster BC, which is again an absolute triumph in design, but this time it was topless. Then the Tricolore, which is ready for takeoff with the unmistakable design language inspired by the Armaki jets and perfectly blends in aeronautical science. And then the R, which is essentially the spiritual successor of the absolutely insane apex-slaying Zonda R. Each one faster and more insane than the last. They take feedback from drivers and engineers and continue tweaking the car until it's absolutely perfect. The initial cars, powered by the bespoke, built for Pagani Mercedes AMG V12s, could hit 238 miles per hour and blast to 60 in just 2.8 seconds. The latest one, the Codalunga, a holy shit, $7.5 million tribute to the Porsche 917, Horacio's favorite car, has nearly 100 more horsepower and weighs 1/3 of a metric ton less. Again, this is a car with no hybrid assists, no lithium-ion battery pack or self-driving capability. It's just this raw V12, ultra lightweight construction, and fighter jet aerodynamics, a simple recipe for an ideal result. So, how was this masterpiece dreamt up in the first place? 1955. That's when a humble baker and his wife, Luca and Maria Pagani, had a son, and they named him Horacio, and they raised him in their villa in Argentina. Destined to live a simple, quiet life, but Horacio had huge dreams and saw the little town he was raised in as a trap, where he couldn't pursue his passion, racing. So, like so many other amazing car gods like Gordon Murray or Michael Schumacher, a young Horacio Pagani designed and built his own race car before his 21st birthday. Are you kidding me? This guy's crazy. In a good way. I mean, I think I was working up courage to text my old high school crush at that time, and Horacio was in a small South American town building a freaking race car that knocked down the first domino in the chain. He went to Renault to help with the race development. He designed new cars, and his cars won. He then moved to Italy to be closer with the greatest car designers the world had to offer. And in 1982, he started employment at a little-known car company called Lamborghini. He started as a janitor. Can you imagine this super genius just sweeping up cigar ash and aluminum shavings next to cars like the Countach? And he's thinking constantly about how, sure, Lamborghini's premier supercar is good, but it could be a whole lot better. So in 1987, he got his chance to prove it. Horacio has risen through the ranks and worked his way all the way up to chief engineer. Coincidentally, right at the same time, the Countach was ready for a refresh. And in 1988, for Lamborghini's 25th anniversary, they made a special edition Countach to celebrate. A special edition car designed by Horacio Pagani. It had bigger, badder air ducting, some never-before-tried aerodynamics, and rolled out of the factory as the fastest car that Lamborghini had ever produced. That was the power of Pagani. Well, hold up. Actually, it was the second fastest. See, in secret, leading a group of similarly crazy engineers, Horacio built the Countach Evolution, this car behind me. And this car? Yes, this car had one very technologically significant feature. Instead of being made of fiberglass and aluminum, Horacio was obsessed with this new stuff called carbon fiber. And yes, this was the 900-pound gorilla in the room because it was about 900 pounds lighter than the normal Countach. And at the same time, it was stiffer, stronger, and better handling. If Lamborghini had any sense at all, they would have put it into production immediately and had a car that was primed and ready to destroy the new Ferrari F40. But Lamborghini, as it turns out, doesn't always have much sense. They saw that Porsche, Ferrari, and Bugatti were still using aluminum, or aluminium. Didn't want to invest the money into developing a carbon fiber program. Just 3 years later, McLaren would shake the world by releasing an all-carbon fiber supercar, Gordon Murray's F1, and every other car company would have to play catch-up. So, Horacio, disgusted with the fact that Lamborghini didn't take him seriously, left the company in 1991. Lambo, they should have listened. See, Pagani wasn't pulling all his knowledge out of thin air. Growing up, in order to afford to build the race cars that we had talked about, he started fabricating fiberglass parts for people. Then, when he was just a janitor at Lamborghini, he actually borrowed money to buy his own autoclave. Basically, this giant oven for making carbon fiber parts in, so that he could prove to Lamborghini how amazing his tech was. And so by 1990, Pagani was one of the few engineers in the world that could claim to be an expert in composites, the material that we now know was the future. So he put the autoclave in the back of his Lamborghini pickup truck, well, since that was his, not Lamborghini's, remember, and started making race car parts instead. The new company he founded, called Modena Designs, actually still makes carbon fiber parts for the most hardcore race cars in existence to this day. But that was just a front, a simple way to fund his real goal: build the ultimate car to humiliate Lamborghini. You'd have thought, though, Lambo, of all companies, would learn not to diss engineers. That's literally how Lamborghini got started. Papa Ferrari told Mr. Lamborghini to pound sand, and so he started a car company just to humiliate Ferrari. Now, the disco tables have turned once again. The Diablo, Lamborghini's flagship car in the 90s, weighing a whopping 3,400 pounds, made just over 500 horsepower and could go on to hit around 200 miles per hour. But in 1999, the Pagani Zonda was released to the world at the Geneva Motor Show. It made roughly the same horsepower and could hit the same top speed. It just got to those speeds way faster thanks to weighing 1,000 pounds less. And that was just the prototype. The Zonda, named after a strong wind in Argentina, is made primarily of carbon fiber and uses an AMG V12 to push it to 100 miles an hour in under 10 seconds. And that's by the time your old Camry makes it to 55, the Zonda, well, it's moving twice as fast. And that's what happens when you actually implement the ideas that Horacio did, way back when he designed the Countach Evolution. But just like I explained with Huayra, the beginning was just the beginning. It seemed that every single year, the Zonda, it got better. There was the C12S in 2002, which had more power, and a 6-speed manual, which if you want to help save the manuals, go check out our best-selling tee up here. Then it got a 7.3 liter engine, which had even more power. Then the drop-top Roadster, then the F. The Zonda F was the most powerful one yet. When it dropped in 2005, the same year as the Bugatti Veyron, it was beating Bugatti's new quad turbocharged W16 into submission when allowed to stretch its legs out on the track. Sure, it didn't have the top speed, but it absolutely had the handling and ultra lightweight construction needed to dominate everywhere else. In fact, the Zonda F Club Sport produced a ring time of 7 minutes and 24 seconds, blowing literally anything Ferrari or Lamborghini had in their stables away. And finally, you got the Zonda R, a track-only 15 ever produced 740 horsepower weapon that hit 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, and oh yeah, absolutely destroyed the production car record at the ring. The Zonda F was faster than most of its rivals, but the Zonda R had no rivals. It would sit at the top of the class until finally being dethroned by the Porsche 911 GT2 RS 7 years later. And it looked absolutely stunning doing it. Seriously, the Zonda stands out even today in a world where a lot of supercars have begun to kind of look the same. So no matter how you slice the pizza, Pagani had out Lamborghini'd Lamborghini. It was wilder, faster, and more raw than the Diablo could ever be. And since Lamborghinis are just kind of Audis now, the Diablo was really their best chance to keep up. Except, you never spend long at the top because when you reach the peak, everyone learns your name. And the Zonda F was faster around the track than the Veyron. But there was a new kid on the block, and his name was Koenigsegg. Yes, Christian von Koenigsegg started his company at nearly the same time as Horacio Pagani. They had a pretty similar vision. Futuristic cars made with space-age technology that focused on speed. And the CCX was right there on the tails of the Zonda. Together, they pushed the old guard forward. These hot new car companies opened a terrifying door and ushered in a new breed of car, the hypercars. So you're probably thinking, what possibly could they follow that up with? Well, the Huayra, that's what. The Zonda was named after some wind. Huayra though, that's the god of wind. When the Zonda could evolve no more, Pagani was ready with new, never used before composites and a couple of turbos. The Huayra sits amongst the gods of the performance car world, with other titans like the Bugatti Chiron and the Koenigsegg Regera. Each of them have been hypercar of the year. And as to which one is fastest, well, it all comes down to the nut behind the steering wheel. But if you ask me, the Huayra, it's the one to have. The Koenigsegg, it's super cool, but it's a hybrid. It's full of driving aids. It's got a fancy dual clutch, and honestly, it looks more at the future than the absolute pinnacle of what we have today. The Chiron, well, it's almost cliche. I mean, everyone knows that a Bugatti's fast, but it's also heavy and relies purely on brute force to get by. The Pagani though, oh baby, the Pagani though. It's a pure driver's car. The single disc clutch saves weight and lets you feel every piece as it slides through the gears. Its rear wheel drive has almost no input lag and is, well, frankly, the most exciting and exotic to look at. Perhaps the only criticism is that it's a bit old now. Koenigsegg has gone through 3 generations since the original Huayra came out, and even Bugatti is looking into the future. Good news, then. Pagani believes this car, the C10, the car that will succeed the Huayra, will be revealed in the next year. And honestly, we don't know much about it, other than that it will still have a V12 AMG power plant. No soulless electric motors here, that's for sure. After all, Horacio is still out there, and he doesn't want the quickest car. Hell, the Zonda's incredible speed was just an accident. He wanted to prove that carbon fiber, it was the future. Now, he just wants to build a car that's the celebration of what a car can be. He wants to focus on lightness, engagement, and pure thrill. And I think I'm speaking for everybody in the room. We can't wait. In the late 80s, Lamborghini had gold on their hands. Or it could have been white stuff, who knows? At that time, they could have toppled Ferrari. They could have maybe even beat McLaren to the punch. Instead, a bunch of stuffy executives that had lost their way told a man named Horacio, no, we don't care about your carbon fiber. Nowadays, you need more than $2 million just to get on the waiting list for a Pagani, and they are the standard that all other cars in the space measure against. So we hope you enjoyed this overdrive on one of the most influential companies of the modern era. Feel free to check out our overdrive starter pack up here, or check out what YouTube wants you to watch next down here. I'm Brad, this is Ideal, and promise me one thing, let's keep living the ideal lifestyle, Pagani style.